if I told you that deep beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, there might be remnants of an advanced civilization that predates every known human society? Or that in the dense jungles of Florida, there exists a species of ant performing complex surgical procedures that would make modern doctors pause in amazement? These aren't plots from science fiction novels or conspiracy theories whispered in dark corners of the internet. These are real mysteries that have emerged from legitimate scientific research, archaeological discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about our planet's history and the capabilities of life itself. Picture this for a moment. You're a construction worker in Mississippi, going about your regular day when your equipment strikes something unusual. You dig a little deeper and uncover a mammoth tusk perfectly preserved, weighing nearly 600 pounds. But here's where it gets interesting. This isn't where mammoths were supposed to live. This discovery, made just last year, forces us to redraw the maps of prehistoric animal migration and question what else we might have gotten wrong about our ancient past. Now multiply that feeling of discovery by 15, because today we're diving into archaeological mysteries that don't just tweak our understanding of history, they potentially shatter it entirely. We're talking about civilizations that built massive fortress networks spanning entire continents, then vanished without a trace. Cities older than the pyramids of Egypt lying beneath ocean waves. Stone monuments in the Amazon that predate the rainforest itself. And perhaps, most unsettling of all, evidence suggesting that human societies might have risen and fallen in cycles far more complex than our linear progression from caves to skyscrapers. The traditional narrative we all learned in school goes something like this. Humans evolved in Africa, migrated across the globe, developed agriculture around 10,000 years ago, built the first cities in Mesopotamia, and gradually progressed to where we are today. It's a neat, comfortable timeline that puts everything in its proper place. But what if that timeline is missing entire chapters? What if there were advanced societies that rose and fell before what we call the dawn of civilization? What if catastrophic events erased not just cities and cultures, but entire epochs of human achievement? These aren't idle questions anymore. Modern technology has given us tools our archaeological predecessors could only dream of. LiDAR technology can peer through dense jungle canopies to reveal hidden cities. Ground-penetrating radar can detect structures buried beneath millennia of sediment. Satellite imagery can identify patterns invisible from ground level. And what these technologies are revealing is forcing even the most conservative scientists to admit that our understanding of the past is far from complete. Take the Bronze Age super-civilization recently discovered in Central Europe. We're not talking about a few scattered settlements. This was a network of over 100 interconnected fortresses, complete with roads, defensive structures, and evidence of complex social organization. They controlled territory spanning modern-day Germany, Austria, Slovakia, and beyond. Their construction techniques were sophisticated, their trade networks extensive, and their military organization impressive. Yet around 1200 BCE, this entire civilization collapsed simultaneously. Every fortress abandoned, every road left to crumble, every achievement forgotten. No invasion, no gradual decline. Just gone as if someone had simply switched off the lights on an entire civilization. Or consider the submerged city off the coast of India in the Gulf of Khambat. Sonar imaging has revealed what appears to be an extensive urban complex lying beneath nearly 130 feet of water. Carbon dating of artifacts recovered from the site suggests an age of over 9,000 years. That would make it older than any known civilization predating the earliest Mesopotamian cities by millennia. If verified, this single discovery would require us to completely rewrite the opening chapters of human history. But perhaps the most intriguing mysteries aren't about lost civilizations at all. They're about capabilities we never suspected existed in the natural world. In Florida's pine forests, researchers have documented something that should be impossible. Carpenter ants performing medical procedures. Not just basic wound care, but actual amputation surgeries. When a worker ant's leg becomes infected, its nestmates will systematically remove the limb at the joint, clean the wound, and provide aftercare. The survival rate for ants receiving this treatment is nearly as high as modern surgical outcomes. This is the only known case outside of humans where a species performs such complex medical interventions. It raises profound questions about consciousness learning and the distribution of intelligence in nature. Each of these discoveries shares something crucial in common. They were all dismissed as impossible until the evidence became undeniable. They all challenge fundamental assumptions about the past, and they all suggest that the story of life on Earth, particularly intelligent life, is far more complex and mysterious than we've been taught. Today, we're going to explore 15 of the most compelling archaeological and natural mysteries that are actively reshaping our understanding of history. These aren't ancient myths or legends passed down through generations. These are discoveries backed by scientific research, documented by credible institutions, and studied by serious academics. Yet they remain largely unknown to the public, hidden in academic journals and specialist conferences. From pyramids in Antarctica that shouldn't exist to golden artifacts in Colombia that seem to depict aircraft 1,000 years before, the Wright brothers from lost cities in the Amazon to evidence of catastrophic floods that may have inspired myths across every culture on Earth, we're about to journey through discoveries that blur the line between the possible and the impossible. So buckle up. Keep an open mind, and prepare to question everything you thought you knew about our past. Because by the end of this journey, you might find yourself wondering not whether these mysteries are real, but how many more are still out there, waiting beneath the ice under the ocean, or hidden in plain sight, ready to overturn our next assumption about what was and wasn't possible in the ancient world. We live in the most extraordinary age of archaeological discovery in human history. Not because we're finding more artifacts, though we are, but because technology has given us eyes to see what was always there, hidden beneath our feet under our oceans and locked in ice. Every year, sometimes every month, discoveries emerge that should revolutionize our understanding of the past. Yet most people never hear about them, and when they do, the implications are downplayed, dismissed, or simply ignored. Think about what's happened in just the last 20 years. LiDAR technology has revealed that the Amazon rainforest, which we thought was pristine wilderness, actually grows on the foundations of massive prehistoric cities. Ground-penetrating radar has shown us that Stonehenge is just the visible tip of a vast underground ritual complex. Satellite imagery has identified over 1,000 potential archaeological sites in Saudi Arabia, alone in areas that were supposedly uninhabited desert. We're not just filling in gaps in history. We're discovering that the gaps are bigger than the history we thought we knew. The pace of discovery is accelerating exponentially. In the 1990s, archaeologists might have discovered 1 or 2 major sites per year. Now, artificial intelligence analyzing satellite data can identify hundreds of potential sites in a single afternoon. Machine learning algorithms can detect patterns in landscape that human eyes would never notice, finding buried pyramids, lost cities, and ancient road networks from space. We have underwater drones mapping the ocean floor, revealing sunken civilizations that myths told us about, but science said couldn't exist. We have muon detectors that can see through solid rock, finding hidden chambers in pyramids that have been studied for centuries. But here's the disturbing part. The more we discover, the less our established history makes sense. We're finding advanced civilizations where there shouldn't be any. We're discovering technologies that predate their supposed invention by thousands of years. We're uncovering connections between ancient cultures that supposedly never interacted. And perhaps most unsettling, we're finding evidence of catastrophic events that wiped out entire civilizations so completely that we forgot they ever existed. The resistance to these discoveries from mainstream academia isn't just skepticism, it's something approaching panic. Entire careers have been built on theories that these discoveries disprove. Textbooks would need to be thrown out. Museums would need to redesign their exhibits. Universities would need to restructure their departments. The financial and reputational cost of admitting how wrong we've been about human history would be staggering. So instead, discoveries that don't fit the narrative are minimized, rationalized away, or simply ignored. Take the dating crisis that's emerging across multiple disciplines. Radiocarbon dating, our gold standard for determining the age of organic materials, is showing anomalies that suggest some fundamental assumption about atmospheric carbon in the past might be wrong. Optically stimulated luminescence dating is giving dates for archaeological sites that contradict the established timeline. Archaeomagnetic dating is revealing that Earth's magnetic field has fluctuated in ways we didn't expect, potentially throwing off all our measurements. When 3 different dating methods give 3 different ages for the same site and none of them match the expected date, something is fundamentally wrong with our understanding. Climate science is adding another layer of complexity. We now know that Earth's climate can change drastically in the span of a decade. Sea levels can rise or fall by hundreds of feet in centuries. Ice ages can start or stop almost overnight in geological terms. These aren't gradual processes taking millions of years, but catastrophic changes that happen within human lifetimes. Any coastal civilization from more than 12,000 years ago is now underwater. Any society that developed during the Ice Age in northern regions is buried under miles of sediment. We're trying to reconstruct human history while most of the evidence is inaccessible to us. The genetic revolution has shattered our understanding of human evolution and migration. We thought we knew how humans spread across the globe, a neat story of migration out of Africa into Europe and Asia, then to Australia, and finally the Americas. But ancient DNA is telling a different story. There were multiple human species coexisting and interbreeding. There were migrations we never suspected. There were populations that vanished without a trace. The Denisovans, an entire human species we didn't know existed until 2010, interbred with our ancestors and contributed genes that some populations still carry today. If we could miss an entire human species until a decade ago, what else have we missed? Indigenous oral traditions, long dismissed as mythology, are being validated by archaeological discoveries. Aboriginal Australians have stories about rising seas that match geological data from 10,000 years ago. Native Americans describe celestial events that astronomers can now date precisely. Pacific Islanders have navigation songs that encode accurate information about ocean currents and island locations. These aren't corrupted memories or fantasies, but accurate historical records preserved in cultural memory for hundreds of generations. If oral traditions can preserve accurate information for 10,000 years, what other myths might actually be history? The intersection of multiple catastrophes around 12,800 years ago is particularly striking. This is when the Younger Dryas began plunging Earth back into an ice age. This is when numerous megafauna species went extinct. This is when the Clovis culture vanished from North America. This is when Göbekli Tepe was deliberately buried. This is when the oldest flood myths describe a great deluge. This is when Plato's Atlantis supposedly sank. The coincidence is too much to ignore. Something happened then, something global and catastrophic, that reset human civilization. But even more intriguing are the patterns that emerge when we look at technological and social development. Agriculture appeared independently in multiple locations around the same time. Pyramid building emerged on different continents within the same general period. Writing systems developed in unconnected cultures using similar principles. Astronomical knowledge appears fully formed in early civilizations without evidence of gradual development. It's as if this knowledge came from somewhere or someone rather than being slowly discovered. The phenomenon of megalithic architecture is particularly puzzling. All over the world, ancient peoples moved stones weighing hundreds of tons, sometimes over vast distances, to build monuments. They did this before the wheel was supposedly invented, before advanced mathematics, before engineering as we understand it. Yet the precision of these constructions rivals or exceeds what we can achieve today. The joints in Inca walls are so tight you can't slip a knife blade between them. The pyramids are aligned to true north more accurately than we can achieve with modern instruments. Stonehenge incorporates complex astronomical alignments that require advanced mathematical knowledge to design. We're also discovering that ancient peoples were far more mobile and interconnected than we believed. Cocaine and nicotine plants, native to the Americas, have been found in Egyptian mummies. Sweet potatoes, originally from South America, were cultivated in Polynesia before Columbus. Chinese anchors have been found off the California coast. Roman coins appear in Japanese tombs. Either ancient peoples had maritime capabilities we don't credit them with, or there was a global trade network that historians have completely missed. The suppression and destruction of evidence is another pattern that keeps emerging. The Library of Alexandria wasn't the only repository of ancient knowledge destroyed. The Spanish burned entire libraries of Mayan codices. The Chinese Emperor Qin Shi Huang ordered the burning of historical texts that contradicted his version of history. ISIS destroyed archaeological sites in Syria and Iraq. It's as if someone or multiple someones throughout history have deliberately tried to erase evidence of the past. The question is, what were they trying to hide? As we prepare to dive into specific mysteries, remember that each one is part of a larger pattern. We're not looking at isolated anomalies, but at pieces of a puzzle that, when assembled, reveals a picture completely different from what we've been taught. The comfortable linear progression from primitive to advanced that appears in our textbooks is a fiction. The real story of humanity is far more complex, far more interesting, and far more sobering. We are not the first to reach for greatness. We are not the first to fall. And if we don't learn from the patterns of the past, we won't be the last. Lost civilizations that shouldn't exist. The White City of Honduras. There are places on Earth that seem to actively resist discovery, as if the jungle itself conspires to keep them hidden. The White City of Honduras. La Ciudad Blanca is one of these places. For 5 centuries, it existed only in whispered legends told by indigenous peoples who warned that those who found it would unleash a curse upon the world. Spanish conquistadors wrote fevered accounts of glimpsing white ramparts through the jungle canopy, of a city where nobles ate from golden plates and jade masks adorned every doorway. Modern explorers who went searching either never returned or came back with tales of valleys that seemed to shift location of compass needles, spinning wildly of an oppressive feeling that they were being watched by something ancient and hostile. The breakthrough came in 2012 when documentary filmmakers Steve Elkins and Bill Benenson took a different approach. Instead of hacking through the jungle, they flew over it with LiDAR technology, firing millions of laser pulses through the canopy to map the ground below. What they discovered sent shock waves through the archaeological community. Hidden beneath one of the densest rainforests on Earth was not just a city, but an entire lost civilization. The scale defied belief. Pyramids rose from the jungle floor, their stepped sides still visible after centuries of vegetation growth. Plazas large enough to hold thousands of people were connected by raised causeways that demonstrated sophisticated engineering. An elaborate network of canals and reservoirs showed advanced water management. Terraced agricultural zones extended for miles into the surrounding hills. This wasn't some minor settlement or trade outpost. This was a major metropolitan center that would have required a population in the hundreds of thousands to build and maintain. When the ground expedition finally reached the site in 2015, led by archaeologist Chris Fisher, they found something that made even hardened scientists pause. The city hadn't been conquered or destroyed. It had been abandoned deliberately with valuable artifacts left in place as if the entire population had fled in the middle of an ordinary day. Metates, heavy grinding stones essential for food preparation, sat with corn still on them. Elaborate stone sculptures of were-jaguars, mythical beings that were half human and half feline, stood in ritual positions around what appeared to be an altar. Most unnervingly, they found what they called a cache of offerings, over 50 carved vessels and objects arranged in a pattern that suggested they were meant to appease something. The artifacts revealed a level of sophistication that challenged everything archaeologists thought they knew about pre-Columbian Honduras. The stonework showed techniques that shouldn't have existed in isolation from the major Mesoamerican civilizations. They found evidence of long-distance trade with obsidian from Guatemala, jade from the Motagua Valley, and ceramics with design motifs that appeared nowhere else in Central America. This civilization had developed its own unique cultural identity while somehow remaining completely unknown to history. But it's what Fisher's team didn't find that proved most puzzling. There were no signs of warfare, no evidence of invasion, no mass graves suggesting disease. The agricultural terraces were still productive, ruling out famine. The water system was intact, eliminating drought as a cause. Something had made hundreds of thousands of people abandon a thriving city and never return something so terrifying that they left their most valuable possessions behind. The indigenous Pek and Tawaka, peoples who still live in the region, refuse to visit the site. They say the city was abandoned because its inhabitants angered the gods with their arrogance, attempting to build a tower that would reach the heavens. As punishment, the gods sent a catastrophe that forced the people to flee, and they cursed the city so that anyone who tried to inhabit it again would face the same fate. The expedition members laughed at these stories until several of them contracted a rare tropical disease that nearly killed them, a disease that local shamans said was the curse beginning to awaken. Carbon dating and ceramic analysis suggest the city flourished between 1000 and 1400 CE, placing it contemporaneous with the height of the Maya civilization. Yet the Maya meticulous record keepers never mentioned this massive neighbor. Neither did the Aztecs, the Olmecs, or any other Mesoamerican culture. It's as if this civilization existed in a bubble invisible to the outside world despite controlling territory the size of El Salvador. What makes this invisibility even stranger is that new LiDAR surveys have revealed this wasn't an isolated city. There's an entire network of similar sites throughout the Mosquitia region connected by ancient roads and sharing the same architectural style. Conservative estimates suggest at least 20 major urban centers, possibly more. We're not talking about a lost city, but a lost civilization that rivaled the Maya in extent and sophistication. How does an entire civilization spanning thousands of square miles and lasting 4 centuries simply vanish from history? And what made them abandon everything in such terror that even their descendants won't return? The Bronze Age super-civilization of Europe. The year is 1600 BCE. Across the heart of Europe, from what is now Poland to the Balkans, an unprecedented engineering project is underway. Massive fortresses are rising from hilltops, each one a marvel of military architecture, with walls 30 feet thick and defensive systems that wouldn't be equaled until medieval times. These aren't isolated strongholds, but nodes in an interconnected network spanning 2,000 miles. Roads paved with timber cross marshlands and forests, connecting over 100 major fortified sites. The coordination required suggests a level of political unity that Europe wouldn't see again until the Roman Empire 2,000 years later. This Bronze Age super-civilization was discovered almost by accident. Archaeologists had known about individual fortress sites for decades, dismissing them as local chieftain strongholds. It wasn't until 2019 when researchers from the Free University of Berlin began comparing satellite imagery and radiocarbon dates from sites across Central Europe that the pattern emerged. These fortresses weren't independent. They were built to the same specifications at the same time using the same construction techniques. Someone had orchestrated the largest building project in prehistoric Europe. The engineering prowess displayed is staggering. Each fortress required moving millions of tons of earth and stone. The walls weren't simple palisades, but complex defensive systems with multiple layers, gates designed as killing fields, and towers positioned for maximum defensive coverage. Inside were workshops producing standardized weapons and tools, suggesting mass production techniques. Storage facilities could hold enough grain to withstand years-long sieges. Underground tunnels connected different parts of the fortresses and possibly linked to other sites miles away. Dr. Barry Malloy from University College Dublin, studying the network, made a startling observation. The fortresses were positioned using sophisticated mathematical principles. They are spaced at regular intervals, usually about a day's march apart. Lines drawn between them create geometric patterns that encode astronomical alignment. The entire network forms a grid across Central Europe that demonstrates knowledge of Earth's curvature and advanced surveying techniques. The society that built these fortresses was remarkably advanced. They had standardized weights and measures across the entire network. Their metallurgy was sophisticated, producing bronze alloys that modern scientists struggle to replicate. They created intricate gold work and jewelry that wouldn't be equaled in Europe for centuries. Their pottery shows mass production techniques using what appear to be molds and templates. This wasn't a collection of tribal societies, but a unified civilization with shared technology, culture, and purpose. Trade goods found at these sites reveal connections spanning from Scandinavia to the Mediterranean. Baltic amber, British tin, Mediterranean glass, and even items from as far as Central Asia appear in the fortresses. This civilization sat at the center of a trade network that connected most of the known world. They were wealthy, powerful, and technologically advanced, which makes what happened next even more mysterious. Around 1200 BCE, every single fortress was abandoned. Not over decades or centuries, but all at once, within perhaps a single generation. The dating is precise enough to show that from Scotland to Greece, from Poland to Spain, the entire Bronze Age world collapsed simultaneously. The fortresses weren't destroyed in battle. There are no signs of siege, no evidence of slaughter, no layers of ash from burning. The people simply walked away, leaving tools, weapons, even food stores behind. This collapse, known as the Late Bronze Age collapse, is one of history's greatest mysteries. Within 50 years, the Mycenaean civilization fell, the Hittite Empire vanished, Egypt barely survived, and this European super-civilization disappeared so completely that we only discovered it 3,000 years later. The standard explanation, invasion by mysterious sea peoples, doesn't work for Central Europe. These fortresses were hundreds of miles from the sea and show no evidence of invasion. Climate data offers a clue but deepens the mystery. Around 1200 BCE, Europe experienced a sudden climate shift. Temperatures dropped, rainfall patterns changed, and growing seasons shortened. But civilizations don't usually respond to climate change by abandoning everything. They adapt, migrate gradually, or modify their agricultural practices. This was different. This was a deliberate, coordinated abandonment of an entire way of life. Recent excavations have found evidence that makes the abandonment even more puzzling. At several sites, valuable bronze objects were deliberately destroyed before abandonment, broken and scattered as if to prevent their use. Fortifications were partially dismantled, not by enemies, but by the inhabitants themselves. Most mysteriously, at multiple sites, human remains have been found in ritual positions suggesting final ceremonies or sacrifices before abandonment. If this civilization controlled half of Europe and had the technology and organization to build a fortress network that rivals Roman achievements, why did they choose to destroy their own culture and disappear into prehistory? The submerged kingdom of Kambat. 90 feet beneath the Arabian Sea off the coast of Gujarat, India, lies evidence that could completely rewrite the timeline of human civilization. In May 2001, marine scientists conducting a routine pollution survey for India's National Institute of Ocean Technology detected something that made them question their equipment. Their side-scan sonar was showing structures that looked impossibly like city blocks, streets intersecting at right angles, massive rectangular buildings, and what appeared to be a dam or reservoir system. The area covered was enormous, over 5 miles long and 2 miles wide, the size of Manhattan. The discovery should have made headlines worldwide. If verified, it would be the oldest city ever found, predating the earliest known civilizations by thousands of years. Instead, it became one of the most controversial and suppressed archaeological discoveries of the 21st century. The few researchers allowed to study it have revealed findings that challenge everything we thought we knew about human development, while critics have fought desperately to discredit evidence they've never been allowed to examine. Dr. S. Badrinarayan, chief geologist for the scientific team, led multiple expeditions to the site. What they found defied explanation. Using sub-bottom profiling and dredging, they recovered artifacts that shouldn't exist: pottery shards, carved wood beads, sculpture fragments, and human bones. Carbon dating of these materials yielded ages ranging from 9,500 to 7,500 years old. But here's what makes this impossible. During that period, humans were supposedly just developing agriculture. The first cities wouldn't appear for another 4,000 years, yet here was evidence of urban planning on a scale that wouldn't be seen again until classical times. The sonar images revealed a level of organization that stunned researchers. Streets were laid out in precise grids, buildings were uniform in size and spacing, suggesting standardized construction. What appeared to be a massive public bath or reservoir showed engineering capabilities that required advanced mathematics. Most remarkably, the entire city seemed to follow a master plan, as if it had been designed as a whole rather than growing organically over time. The location tells its own story. During the last ice age, when sea levels were 400 feet lower, the Gulf of Kambat would have been a river valley fed by what is now the Narmada River. It would have been prime real estate for an ancient civilization, fertile with fresh water and access to the sea. But as the ice caps melted between 15,000 and 7,000 years ago, the valley would have flooded, possibly in catastrophic pulses that gave the inhabitants little time to evacuate. This matches disturbing well with ancient Indian texts. The Mahabharata describes great cities that existed before a massive flood. It tells of Dvaraka, the golden city of Krishna, which was swallowed by the sea. These texts, written thousands of years ago, describe the city's layout in detail, its planned streets, its massive buildings, its advanced technology. Details that match what sonar is revealing beneath the waves. For centuries, these were dismissed as mythology. Kambat suggests they might be historical records. The artifacts recovered tell of a sophisticated society. The pottery shows advanced firing techniques and decorative styles. Jewelry demonstrates skilled metalworking. Most intriguingly, what appears to be a piece of wood with inscriptions was recovered, though the script remains undeciphered. If verified as writing, it would be the oldest ever discovered, predating Sumerian cuneiform by millennia. But the resistance to these findings has been fierce and suspicious. International archaeologists have demanded access to the site, but been denied by Indian authorities. Critics claim the artifacts could have been washed down from land over millennia, ignoring that many were recovered from sealed geological layers. The carbon dates have been questioned despite being performed by multiple laboratories. Most tellingly, after initial excitement, media coverage of Kambat disappeared almost overnight as if someone had ordered a blackout. Dr. Graham Hancock, who has extensively researched Kambat, points out disturbing parallels with other underwater sites. Similar structures have been found off Cuba, Japan, and Malta, all at depths that would have been dry land during the Ice Age. All show evidence of advanced construction. All have been dated to around the same period, and all have been subjected to the same pattern of suppression and denial. It's as if there's a coordinated effort to prevent investigation of underwater sites that might prove advanced civilizations existed before the accepted timeline. The implications of Kambat are staggering. If cities existed 9,500 years ago, everything we think we know about human development is wrong. Agriculture, writing, mathematics, engineering, all would have developed thousands of years earlier than believed. The progression from hunter-gatherer to urban dweller isn't a recent innovation, but possibly a cycle that has repeated multiple times, with each iteration destroyed by catastrophe and forgotten by history. Standing on a boat above Kambat, knowing that beneath the waves lies possible proof of a lost chapter of human history that someone desperately doesn't want examined, you have to wonder how many other cities lie beneath our oceans holding secrets that would shatter our understanding of who we are and where we came from. These three lost civilizations share characteristics that demolish our conventional understanding of human development. Each represents a level of advancement that shouldn't have existed in their time. Each controlled vast territories and populations. Each developed unique technologies and cultural practices, and each met a sudden, catastrophic end that erased them from history so completely that we're only now discovering they existed. The pattern is undeniable. Advanced civilizations rise, achieve remarkable feats, then vanish virtually overnight. Not through conquest or gradual decline, but through deliberate abandonment or sudden catastrophe. It's as if reaching a certain level of development triggers something either environmental, cosmic, or perhaps something else entirely that resets human civilization to zero. The question that haunts us is, if it happened to them with all their knowledge and power, what makes us think we're immune? Impossible structures, the Antarctic pyramids at coordinates 79°58'39'2, S 81°57'32'2. Rising from the frozen wasteland of Antarctica's Ellsworth Mountains stands something that officially doesn't exist. It's been photographed by satellites, visited by military expeditions, and mapped by glaciologists. Yet you won't find it mentioned in any scientific journal. It's a perfect pyramid, its four faces aligned to the cardinal directions with a precision that matches the Great Pyramid of Giza. And it's not alone. At least 3 other similar structures have been identified in Antarctica, all displaying the same impossible perfection, all officially dismissed as natural formations. The first clear images emerged from the 1946 Operation High Jump, a massive U.S. Navy expedition to Antarctica, led by Admiral Richard Byrd. Officially a training exercise, the operation involved 13 ships, 23 aircraft, and over 4,000 men. Pilots reported seeing geometric structures protruding from the ice. Their photographs classified for decades, showed pyramidal mountains that looked disturbingly artificial. When these images were finally released heavily redacted, they sparked a controversy that continues today. The largest of these pyramids rises nearly a mile into the Antarctic sky, making it comparable in height to some of the world's tallest mountains. But mountains don't have perfectly flat faces. Mountains don't have edges that run in straight lines for thousands of feet. Mountains don't align with compass directions in a continent where magnetic north shifts constantly. Yet this is exactly what we see in Antarctica. In 2016, a team of European and American scientists conducted the first acknowledged close examination of one of these structures. Their findings, leaked rather than published, are extraordinary. Ground-penetrating radar revealed internal chambers and passages that follow geometric patterns. The rock composition differs from the surrounding geology, containing minerals that aren't native to Antarctica. Most remarkably, the structures appear to be giving off measurable electromagnetic signatures similar to those detected at other pyramid sites worldwide. Dr. Vanessa Bowman of the British Antarctic Survey was part of this expedition. In carefully worded statements that avoid direct claims, she's noted that the structures display anomalous characteristics inconsistent with natural geological formation. She's pointed out that the weathering patterns suggest the pyramids were exposed to open air for extended periods, which would be impossible given that Antarctica has been frozen for at least 15 million years. Unless, of course, they were built before the ice, which would make them older than the human species. The thermal imaging of these pyramids reveals another impossibility. They're warmer than the surrounding ice, and rock maintaining a temperature differential that can't be explained by albedo or solar absorption alone. Something inside these structures is generating heat. Speculation ranges from geothermal activity to functioning ancient technology, but no natural explanation adequately accounts for the observed data. The orientation of the pyramids adds another layer of mystery. They're not randomly positioned, but form a pattern when viewed from above. Lines drawn between them create geometric shapes that encode mathematical relationships. The distances between them correspond to significant numbers in ancient metrology. It's as if they were placed according to a plan that required accurate mapping of Antarctica before it was covered in ice. This is where things get really strange. The Piri Reis map of 1513 shows Antarctica's coastline as it appears under the ice, something we've only been able to verify with modern sonar. The Orontius Phineus map of 1532 shows Antarctica completely free of ice with mountain ranges where we now know they exist. These maps claim to be copies of much older sources. If the pyramids were built when Antarctica was ice-free, someone mapped them, and that knowledge survived in fragments that medieval cartographers incorporated without understanding what they were copying. The suppression surrounding these structures is unprecedented. Scientific teams that announce plans to study them have their funding withdrawn. Satellite imagery of the areas is routinely of lower quality than surrounding regions. The areas have been declared off-limits to tourists and most researchers. Military activity in the vicinity is constant but classified. It's as if multiple governments have agreed that whatever these pyramids are, the public shouldn't know about them. Recent whistleblower testimony has added fuel to the fire. Several former military personnel have claimed that expeditions to the pyramids recovered artifacts that were immediately classified at the highest levels. They describe entering chambers within the pyramids that contained technology they couldn't identify, writings in unknown scripts, and most remarkably, evidence that the structures were recently occupied, despite being buried under ice for supposedly millions of years. The similarities between the Antarctic pyramids and those in Egypt, Mexico, and China are too precise to be coincidental. The same golden ratio appears in their proportions. The same astronomical alignments are encoded in their placement. The same construction techniques using massive blocks fitted without mortar are evident. Either pyramid building was a universal human response to some unknown imperative, or these structures were all built by the same civilization, one that spanned the globe when Antarctica was habitable. If these pyramids are artificial, they represent the oldest structures on Earth, predating any known civilization by millions of years. If they're natural, they're the most pyramid-like natural formations ever discovered, so perfect that they challenge our understanding of geological processes. Either way, they suggest that Antarctica holds secrets that could completely rewrite not just human history, but the history of intelligence on Earth. What civilization could have built pyramids in Antarctica before it froze, and why are world governments so desperate to keep them secret? The Golden Flyers of Colombia. In the Gold Museum of Bogota, Colombia, behind bulletproof glass, and under constant guard, sit artifacts that shouldn't exist according to our understanding of history. They're small, most no larger than 4 inches, crafted from pure gold with a precision that would be impressive today. They're over 1,000 years old, created by the Quimbaya civilization between 500 and 1000 CE. And they look exactly like modern aircraft, specifically delta-wing fighter jets, that wouldn't be invented for another 1,000 years. When these artifacts were first discovered in tombs along the Magdalena River in the late 1800s, they were catalogued as zoomorphic figurines, presumed to be stylized representations of birds or insects. For decades they sat in museum cases, curiosities from a pre-Columbian culture, until 1969, when Yvonne Sanderson, a zoologist and mechanical engineer, examined them closely and made an observation that changed everything. These objects didn't resemble any known animal. The proportions were wrong for any birdfish or insect, but they were perfect for mechanical flight. Sanderson noted features that no animal possesses, but every aircraft requires. The wings were positioned low on the fuselage and swept back at angles optimal for high-speed flight. The tail assemblies were vertical, unlike any bird, but exactly like an airplane's rudder. There were horizontal stabilizers separate from the wings. Most remarkably, there were what appeared to be pilot compartments with detailed cockpit windows. These weren't rough approximations. These were accurate aerodynamic designs. Dr. Arthur Poisley of the Aeronautical Institute of New York took the analysis further. He created precise scaled models of the Golden Flyers and subjected them to wind tunnel testing. The results were extraordinary. These designs weren't just aerodynamically viable. They were sophisticated. The wing configurations would provide excellent lift-to-drag ratios. The control surfaces were positioned for optimal stability. With the addition of a propulsion system, these designs would fly, and fly well. German aeronautical engineers Algund Ienboom and Peter Belting decided to test this definitively. They built radio-controlled models of the Golden Flyers, adding only propellers and engines, changing nothing about the original designs. At a public demonstration in 1997, their models didn't just fly, They performed aerobatic maneuvers that would be impossible if the designs were accidental. The models demonstrated stability in crosswinds, could perform loops and rolls, and landed with precision. These weren't lucky accidents. These were engineered aircraft designs. But here's what makes these artifacts even more impossible. They're not unique to Colombia. Similar objects have been found throughout pre-Columbian America. The Incas had comparable designs. The Aztecs created similar forms. Even more mysteriously ancient texts from India, written centuries before the Quimbaya culture, describe vimanas, flying vehicles, with remarkably similar configurations. Egyptian reliefs show objects with the same aerodynamic features. It's as if multiple ancient cultures worldwide were familiar with the same flight technology. The detail on these artifacts suggests first-hand observation rather than imagination. Some figurines show what appear to be riveted panels, exhaust ports, and even landing gear. One particularly detailed piece seems to depict a ramjet engine configuration that wasn't developed until the 1940s. Another shows what looks like variable geometry wings technology that didn't appear until the 1960s. These aren't features you'd add to a religious icon or animal representation. Metallurgical analysis has revealed another layer of sophistication. The gold alloys used are remarkably pure and consistent, requiring advanced smelting techniques. Some pieces show evidence of electroplating, a process supposedly not invented until 1805. The precision of the smallest details suggests the use of magnification and fine tools that the Quimbaya weren't supposed to possess. The conventional archaeological explanation is that these are stylized representations of flying animals, possibly flying fish or bees that held religious significance. But this falls apart under scrutiny. The Quimbaya were master craftsmen who created stunningly realistic representations of humans, animals, and plants. Their other gold work shows anatomically correct details. Why would they suddenly abandon realism for these specific objects? And why do these stylized animals follow the principles of aerodynamics so precisely? Recent computer modeling has revealed the most unsettling detail yet. When the proportions and angles of the golden flyers are analyzed, they match optimal configurations for supersonic flight. The sweep angles of the wings, the area ratios of control surfaces, the fuselage shapes all correspond to design principles that aerospace engineers didn't discover until the development of jet fighters. It's as if the creators had access to advanced aerodynamic knowledge, or were copying something that did. Some researchers have proposed that the golden flyers are evidence of ancient contact with an advanced civilization, either terrestrial or otherwise. Others suggest they represent a lost human technology, evidence that powered flight was achieved centuries before the Wright brothers. The most conservative theory is that they're the result of intuitive design accidentally matching aerodynamic principles. But the precision, consistency, and distribution of these artifacts make accident increasingly unlikely. If ancient peoples had no concept of mechanical flight, how did they create models that modern aerospace engineers confirm are optimal flying designs? The Avebury Complex. In the rolling hills of Wiltshire, England, stands a monument so vast that an entire village sits within it, its residents living their daily lives inside one of the most profound mysteries of the ancient world. Avebury is the largest stone circle complex in Europe, a massive ceremonial landscape that dwarfs its more famous neighbor, Stonehenge, in both scale and complexity. But Avebury is more than just a large monument. It's an integrated system of earthwork, stone circles, avenues, and underground features that represents one of the most ambitious construction projects in human prehistory. The statistics alone are staggering. The outer bank of Avebury encloses an area of 28 acres, large enough to hold the Roman Colosseum 4 times over. The ditch, carved from solid chalk bedrock using only antler picks and wooden shovels, was originally 30 feet deep and 60 feet wide. The amount of chalk and earth moved over 200,000 tons would have required millions of work hours. The outer stone circle originally consisted of 98 to 105 massive sarsen stones, some weighing over 40 tons, arranged in a perfect circle over 1,300 feet in diameter. But what makes Avebury truly extraordinary is its precision and integration. This isn't a single monument, but a carefully planned landscape. 2 massive stone avenues, the West Kennet Avenue and the Beckhampton Avenue, extend for miles from the main circle, connecting it to other ceremonial sites. The entire complex is aligned with astronomical phenomena, so precisely that it functions as a vast calendar and observatory. The rising and setting points of the sun and moon at significant times of the year are marked by stone alignments that required centuries of observation to establish. Dr. Terence Meaden of Oxford University has spent decades studying Avebury and has made remarkable discoveries. The stones weren't randomly selected but carefully chosen for their shapes and natural features. Some have natural holes that align with celestial events. Others have profiles that create shadow plays at specific times. The entire monument seems designed to demonstrate the marriage of earth and sky, with the circular henge representing the earth goddess and the stones representing sky deities. Recent archaeological work has revealed that Avebury is even more complex than surface features suggest. Ground-penetrating radar has identified a vast network of buried features, hidden stone circles, ritual pits, and what appear to be deliberately positioned offerings. There's an entire underground landscape that mirrors and complements what's visible above. One archaeologist described it as discovering that what you thought was a cathedral is actually just the spire of a buried city. The construction of Avebury required not just labor, but sophisticated knowledge. The builders understood complex geometry, using a standard unit of measurement that appears in monuments across Britain. They had knowledge of acoustics. Certain stones amplify and direct sound in ways that seem deliberate. They understood engineering. The stones are placed in socket holes designed to prevent toppling despite their massive height-to-base ratios. This wasn't trial and error, but applied science. But here's what makes Avebury impossible according to conventional history. It was built by a Neolithic culture that supposedly had no writing, no metal tools, no wheel, and no draft animals. They were simple farmers who had only recently adopted agriculture. Yet they created a monument that required advanced planning, complex mathematics, and multi-generational commitment to complete. The main phase of construction lasted over 600 years, meaning 25 generations worked toward a single vision. The purpose of Avebury remains enigmatic. It's too large for defensive purposes. It's poorly positioned for habitation. The effort invested far exceeds any practical return. Current theories suggest it was a ceremonial center, possibly for ancestor worship or seasonal celebrations. But these explanations feel inadequate given the monument's scale and sophistication. It's like explaining the space program as an exercise in throwing things upward. Even more mysterious are the connections between Avebury and other sites worldwide. The mathematical principles encoded in Avebury appear in monuments on other continents. The Hopewellian earthworks of Ohio use the same geometric principles. Angkor Wat in Cambodia incorporates similar astronomical alignments. The pyramid complexes of Egypt encode the same mathematical constants. Either these similarities are coincidental, which seems statistically impossible, or prehistoric peoples shared knowledge across vast distances through networks we haven't discovered. The acoustic properties of Avebury suggest it was designed for sound-based rituals. Drums beaten at certain points can be heard clearly at specific locations over a mile away while being inaudible at points between. Songs sung within the stone circles create standing waves and resonances that would have seemed magical to ancient peoples. Some researchers have suggested the monument was a kind of musical instrument played by the earth itself during ceremonies. Recent excavations have revealed that people traveled from across Britain and continental Europe to participate in building and using Avebury. Isotope analysis of buried remains shows individuals from Scotland, Wales, and Brittany. The resources required to feed and house these workers would have been enormous. This wasn't a local monument, but a site of international importance that drew pilgrims from across the known world. How did Neolithic farmers, supposedly just emerging from the Stone Age, conceive and execute an engineering project that would challenge us today? And why did they encode in stone mathematical and astronomical knowledge we've only recently rediscovered? These impossible structures share characteristics that shatter our understanding of ancient capabilities. The Antarctic pyramids suggest either prehistoric construction when Antarctica was ice-free, or natural formations so perfect they defy geological explanation. The Golden Flyers demonstrate aerodynamic knowledge a millennium before flight. Avebury shows Neolithic peoples possessed mathematical and engineering skills that rival our own. Each structure encodes knowledge that its builders shouldn't have possessed. Each demonstrates capabilities that don't fit our timeline of technological development. And each suggests that ancient peoples either had access to advanced knowledge we've lost, or were instructed by someone who did. The precision isn't accidental. The knowledge isn't intuitive. The distribution isn't coincidental. We're looking at evidence of a hidden chapter in human achievement, one that someone has worked very hard to keep us from understanding. Phenomena beyond current understanding, the surgical ants of Florida. In the humid pine forests of northern Florida, a species of carpenter ant is performing medical procedures that would have been considered impossible for any non-human creature until scientists witnessed it themselves. Camponotus floridanus, an unremarkable-looking ant species, has been documented conducting complex surgical amputations on injured colony members with success rates approaching those of modern hospitals. This isn't simple wound care or instinctive behavior. This is diagnostic medicine, surgical intervention, and post-operative care that demonstrates cognitive abilities that should not exist in an insect with a brain smaller than a grain of sand. The discovery came about almost by accident. Dr. Eric Frank, a behavioral ecologist from the University of Würzburg, was studying ant rescue behavior when he noticed something extraordinary. When a worker ant's leg became infected with metarhizium fungus, a common threat in Florida's humid environment, the colony's response went far beyond anything documented in the animal kingdom. Instead of abandoning the infected individual as most social insects do, the ants initiated what can only be described as a medical protocol. The process begins with diagnosis. Healthy workers examine the infected limb using their antennae, spending up to an hour assessing the wound. They can differentiate between injuries that will heal naturally, those requiring cleaning, and those needing amputation. This differential diagnosis requires understanding cause and effect, recognizing that an infected limb will kill the ant unless removed knowledge that shouldn't exist in an insect nervous system. When amputation is deemed necessary, the surgical team assembles. Usually 3 to 4 workers position themselves around the patient. Using their mandibles as surgical instruments, they begin cutting at the joint closest to healthy tissue. The precision is remarkable. They avoid cutting too high, which would cause unnecessary tissue loss, or too low, which would leave infection behind. The procedure takes 40 to 60 minutes, during which the patient remains still possibly sedated by chemicals we haven't identified. But here's what transforms this from remarkable to paradigm-shifting the post-operative care. After amputation, the surgical team cleaned the wound with antimicrobial secretions from specialized glands. They continue treating the patient for days, bringing food, helping with mobility, and regularly cleaning the amputation site. The survival rate for ants receiving this treatment exceeds 90%. Without it, mortality from infection approaches 100%. Dr. Frank's team has documented over 300 surgical procedures, and the consistency is stunning. The ants follow the same steps every time, like surgeons following a medical protocol. But unlike human surgeons who learn from books and teachers, these ants seem to acquire their knowledge through observation and practice. Young ants watch experienced workers and gradually develop their skills. They make mistakes initially, learning from failure, improving with experience. The implications for our understanding of consciousness are profound. This behavior requires multiple cognitive abilities that insects supposedly don't possess. Diagnostic capability requires understanding internal states and predicting future outcomes. Surgical precision requires anatomical knowledge and fine motor control. Team coordination requires communication and role differentiation. Post-operative care requires empathy and long-term planning. Each of these abilities alone would be remarkable in an insect. Together, they suggest a level of intelligence we've completely missed. Even more remarkably, the ants adapt their treatment based on the type and location of injury. Femur injuries are almost always amputated because infection spreads quickly from that location. Tibia injuries are often treated with cleaning alone, as infection spreads more slowly from the lower leg. This isn't one-size-fits-all behavior, but tailored medical treatment based on diagnostic assessment. The ants understand their own anatomy and infection patterns better than many vertebrates understand theirs. Recent experiments have pushed the boundaries even further. When researchers introduced pathogens the ants had never encountered, the colonies didn't just fail and accept losses. They experimented with different treatments, observed outcomes, and developed new protocols. Within days, they had established effective treatments for novel diseases. This is real-time medical research, hypothesis testing, and protocol development conducted by insects. Chemical analysis of the secretions used during surgery has identified compounds with powerful antimicrobial properties, some completely new to science. These aren't random chemicals, but a sophisticated pharmacopoeia that includes antibiotics, antifungals, and possibly analgesics. Pharmaceutical companies are now studying these compounds for human applications, humble acknowledgement that ant medicine might advance human medicine. The evolutionary implications are staggering. This behavior is too complex to have evolved through simple natural selection. It requires multiple traits to develop simultaneously, the ability to diagnose the tools to cut the chemicals, to treat the social structure to support injured individuals, and the cognitive capacity to coordinate it all. The odds of all these evolving together by chance are astronomically small. Yet here it is functioning perfectly in Florida's forests. If ants can perform surgery, what other capabilities exist in nature that we've dismissed because they don't fit our mammal-centric view of intelligence? The Harakput face. Deep in Peru's Madre de Dios, rainforest, where the Amazon meets the eastern slopes of the Andes, there exists a cliff face that challenges our understanding of both geology and human capability. The Harakput face, named after the indigenous people who have guarded its location for generations, is either one of nature's most extraordinary coincidences or evidence of engineering capabilities that shouldn't have existed in prehistoric South America. Carved into or naturally formed on a vertical cliff 200 feet high, is a human face so detailed, so proportionate, and so expressive that it seems to watch over the valley below with conscious intent. The face measures approximately 50 feet from chin to crown, with features that are unmistakably human. The eyes are deeply recessed with clearly defined irises and pupils that create an optical illusion seeming to track observers as they move through the valley below. The nose projects from the cliff with precisely formed nostrils. The mouth, slightly parted, gives the impression of being about to speak. The proportions follow the golden ratio that Renaissance artists considered the mathematical key to beauty. This isn't an abstract or stylized representation. This is a portrait. The Harakput people, who have inhabited this region for at least 1,000 years, according to archaeological evidence, insist the face is artificial, created by their ancestors, or perhaps by an even older civilization that their ancestors encountered. Their oral traditions speak of the time of the grandfathers, when giants walked the earth and possessed the power to shape stone with sound. They describe the face as a guardian placed to watch over a sacred valley where the first humans learned the secrets of the forest. When geologist Dr. Patricia Vargas from Peru's Universidad Nacional Mayor de San Marcos first examined the face in 2015, she expected to quickly confirm it as a natural formation. Erosion and human pattern recognition, she assumed, had created an illusion of intention where none existed. But her analysis yielded results that challenged this assumption. The rock face showed clear evidence of tool marks. There were chisel patterns following the contours of features. The eyes had been artificially deepened. Most significantly, the type of granite composing the face doesn't naturally erode into such defined features. The engineering required to create this face, if it is artificial, would be staggering even today. The cliff is nearly vertical, with no natural ledges or platforms from which to work. Creating the face would have required sophisticated scaffolding systems or suspension techniques. The precision of the features suggests detailed planning, possibly scale models and mathematical calculations to maintain proportions when working on such a large scale. This isn't something that could be improvised. This would require advanced planning and engineering knowledge. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed that the face is more than a surface carving. Behind it lies a network of chambers and passages that appear to be artificial. There's a large central chamber, approximately 30 feet behind the face, with smaller auxiliary chambers connected by passages. What appears to be a sealed entrance exists at the base of the cliff, though the Harakbut refused to allow it to be opened, saying the time hasn't come for the secrets within to be revealed. The face's orientation adds another layer of mystery. It faces precisely east, aligned with the equinox sunrise. On the spring and autumn equinoxes, the first rays of sunlight illuminate the face in a way that makes it appear to come alive. Shadows shift across the features, creating the illusion of changing expressions. The eyes seem to open. The mouth appears to move. This astronomical alignment, combined with the precision of the carving, suggests the creators possessed sophisticated knowledge of both engineering and celestial mechanics. Recent drone surveys have revealed that the Harakbut face isn't unique. Similar formations have been identified at 7 other locations throughout the Madre de Dios region. All face cardinal directions. All are associated with indigenous legends about ancient guardians. All show the same combination of precise features and astronomical alignments. If these are all artificial, they represent a monumental undertaking by a prehistoric civilization whose existence isn't acknowledged by mainstream archaeology. The Harakbut people continue to perform ceremonies at the face, particularly during times of crisis or important tribal decisions. They claim the face communicates with chosen individuals through dreams and visions, providing guidance and warnings. Shamans spend days in meditation before the face emerging with knowledge they say comes from the ancestors. While Western science dismisses this as superstition, researchers have documented unusual phenomena at the site. Electromagnetic surveys show anomalies around the face, similar to those found at other sacred sites worldwide. The local magnetic field fluctuates in patterns that don't match natural geological processes. Some researchers have suggested these anomalies might affect human brain activity, potentially inducing altered states of consciousness. Whether intentionally designed or naturally occurring, the face seems to create conditions that facilitate transcendent experiences. Carbon dating of organic material found in cracks on the face suggests it has been exposed to the elements for at least 3,000 years, but weathering patterns indicate it could be much older, possibly 10,000 years or more. If accurate, this would predate any known civilization in South America, suggesting that advanced cultures existed in the Amazon basin far earlier than conventional archaeology accepts. Is the Harakbut face a message from a lost civilization, a monument to knowledge we've forgotten, or evidence that human capabilities in prehistory far exceeded what we've been taught to believe? These phenomena, beyond current understanding, force us to confront the limitations of our knowledge and the arrogance of our assumptions. Surgical ants demonstrate that intelligence and medical knowledge can emerge in organisms we considered simple automatons. The Harakbut face suggests that ancient peoples possessed engineering capabilities that challenge our modern abilities. Together, they hint at a world far stranger and more wonderful than our textbooks describe. The pattern is clear capabilities we thought were uniquely human or uniquely modern appear throughout nature and throughout history. Intelligence, creativity, and knowledge manifest in forms we didn't expect in places we didn't look, in times we thought were primitive. We're not discovering new things so much as discovering how much we've missed, how much we've dismissed, and how much we've deliberately ignored, because it didn't fit our comfortable narratives about the specialness of modern humanity. Catastrophic events and lost knowledge. The Younger Dryas Mystery. Imagine waking up one morning to find the world ending. Not metaphorically, but literally. The sky is on fire. Massive chunks of ice, some the size of buildings, are falling from above. The ground shakes continuously. A wall of water 300 feet high races across the landscape, obliterating everything in its path. The temperature drops 20 degrees in a matter of hours. This isn't science fiction. This is what happened to Earth 12,800 years ago, and the evidence suggests it wiped out an advanced civilization whose achievements we're only now beginning to discover. The Younger Dryas event represents one of the most dramatic climate reversals in Earth's recent history. For context, the planet had been warming steadily for thousands of years. Ice sheets were retreating, forests were advancing northward, and human cultures were flourishing. Then, in less than a human lifetime, possibly in just a single decade, everything changed. Temperatures plummeted by up to 18 degrees Fahrenheit globally. Ice sheets that had been retreating for millennia suddenly surged forward, reclaiming vast territories. Sea levels dropped dramatically as water was locked into expanding glaciers. The warm, hospitable world that had nurtured human development turned into a frozen wasteland almost overnight. For decades, scientists struggled to explain this sudden reversal. The conventional theory was that melting glaciers had disrupted ocean currents, particularly the Gulf Stream, causing the rapid cooling. But this explanation had serious flaws. The speed of onset was too rapid for oceanic changes alone. The geographic pattern didn't match what ocean current disruption would cause. Most problematically, evidence showed extreme heat alongside extreme cold, massive wildfires burning at the same time glaciers were advancing, a combination that made no sense under any natural climate model. In 2007, a team of scientists led by Dr. Richard Firestone made a discovery that changed everything. In sedimentary layers dating to exactly the start of the Younger Dryas, they found evidence that shouldn't exist. Nanodiamonds, microscopic diamonds, formed only under extreme pressure and heat. Iridium, an element rare on Earth but common in asteroids. Melt glass spherules, tiny beads of glass created when rock is instantaneously melted and thrown into the atmosphere. And carbon spherules, containing exotic fullerenes with extraterrestrial helium isotopes. This evidence appears at over 100 sites across 4 continents, all in the same narrow time window. The conclusion was inescapable. Earth had been struck by multiple fragments of a disintegrating comet or asteroid. The impacts were powerful enough to trigger massive wildfires that burned 10% of the planet's biomass, throwing enough soot and ash into the atmosphere to block sunlight and trigger the sudden cooling. The impacts also destabilized ice sheets, causing massive flooding as ice dams broke and released glacial lakes containing more water than all the Great Lakes combined. But here's where the story becomes truly extraordinary. Archaeological sites from just before the Younger Dryas show evidence of sophisticated cultures that vanished at precisely this moment. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with its elaborate carved pillars depicting astronomical events, was deliberately buried at the start of the Younger Dryas. The Clovis culture of North America, with their advanced stoneworking techniques that we still can't replicate, disappeared overnight. Sites across Europe, Asia, and the Americas show the same pattern: advanced cultures, thriving, then nothing. Dr. Graham Hancock and Dr. Randall Carlson have compiled evidence suggesting that the Younger Dryas impact didn't just affect primitive hunter-gatherers. They propose it destroyed an advanced civilization that existed during the Ice Age. They point to underwater structures off coastlines worldwide that would have been above sea level before the catastrophic flooding. The Yonaguni Monument off Japan, the Bimini Road in the Bahamas, structures off India and Cuba all show evidence of artificial construction, and all would have been dry land before the Younger Dryas flooding. The black mat layer provides haunting physical evidence of the catastrophe. This distinct geological stratum found across North America represents the moment of impact. Below it, abundant evidence of megafauna, mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, along with sophisticated human artifacts. Above it, most of these species are extinct, and human artifacts become crude and primitive. It's as if civilization was literally reset to zero. Ancient myths from around the world describe this event in remarkably consistent terms. The Ojibwa of the Great Lakes region tell of the long-tailed heavenly climbing star that swept low across the sky and scorched the earth. The Norse Ragnarok describes fire and ice consuming the world. The Hindu Vedas speak of Agni, the fire god destroying the world before it was reborn. The Greek myth of Phaethon tells of the sun's chariot setting the world ablaze. These aren't metaphors. They're eyewitness accounts of a cosmic catastrophe preserved in cultural memory for 13,000 years. Computer modeling of the impacts reveals phenomena that match these ancient descriptions. Impacts on the 2-mile-thick North American ice sheet would have thrown massive chunks of ice hundreds of miles through the air, explaining Native American legends of ice falling from the sky. The heat would have caused atmospheric shock waves, creating thunderous sounds that would have seemed like the gods were at war. The combination of fire from impacts and freezing from the subsequent nuclear winter would have seemed like the end of the world. Because for the civilization that existed, then it was. Recent discoveries have added disturbing details. The Carolina Bays, thousands of elliptical depressions across the Atlantic coastal plain, all point back to a central impact point in the Great Lakes region. They're not lakes, but impact craters from ice boulders thrown by the primary impact. The Nebraska rainwater basins show the same pattern, pointing to impacts in the northern ice sheet. We're looking at evidence of a cosmic shotgun blast that devastated an entire continent. If an advanced civilization was destroyed by the Younger Dryas, impact leaving only scattered survivors to rebuild from nothing what knowledge was lost. And are we approaching another encounter with the same cosmic debris field, the Toba supervolcano? Event 74,000 years ago, the Earth experienced one of the most devastating volcanic eruptions in its history, an event so catastrophic that it nearly drove our species to extinction and may have eliminated other human species that were potentially more advanced than our ancestors. Mount Toba in Sumatra didn't simply erupt. It exploded with a force that defies comprehension, ejecting 670 cubic miles of material into the atmosphere, 10,000 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens, equivalent to 1 million Hiroshima bombs detonating simultaneously. The immediate effects were apocalyptic. The explosion was heard on the opposite side of the planet. A column of ash and gas rose 25 miles into the stratosphere. Pyroclastic flows traveling at hundreds of miles per hour incinerated everything within a 100-mile radius. Tsunamis, hundreds of feet high, struck coastlines thousands of miles away. But these were just the opening acts of a global catastrophe that would last for years. The ash cloud spread across the planet within days, blocking out the sun and triggering what scientists call a volcanic winter. Global temperatures dropped by up to 15 degrees Celsius. Photosynthesis stopped across vast regions as plants died from lack of sunlight. The food chain collapsed from the bottom up. Acid rain fell continuously, poisoning water sources and killing more vegetation. For 6 years, the world was plunged into a twilight existence where the sun was barely visible through the ash-darkened sky. Genetic evidence reveals the devastating impact on humanity. Our species experienced what geneticists call a population bottleneck, with the global human population dropping to as few as 3,000 individuals, possibly as low as 500 breeding pairs. We came within a hair's breadth of extinction. Every human alive today descends from this tiny group of survivors who somehow endured the catastrophe. But here's what makes Toba particularly mysterious. We weren't the only human species affected, and the evidence suggests some of those other species might have been more advanced than we were. Dr. Stanley Ambrose of the University of Illinois has spent decades studying the Toba catastrophe and its effects on human evolution. His research reveals something deeply unsettling. Before Toba, there were multiple human populations across Africa and Asia, each with distinct tool-making traditions and cultural practices. Homo sapiens, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo floresiensis, and possibly other undiscovered species. After Toba, only we survived in significant numbers, and even we barely made it. Archaeological sites in India have yielded the most puzzling evidence. Dr. Michael Petraglia's excavations at Jwalapuram have found sophisticated stone tools buried beneath the Toba ash layer. These aren't crude hand axes, but advanced implements showing complex manufacturing techniques. Blades with pressure-flaking composite tools with hefting geometric microliths that required precise calculation to create. Even more remarkably, they found evidence of symbolic behavior, beads requiring multi-stage manufacturing ochre with geometric engravings and what appear to be the post holes of substantial structures. But here's the mystery. The tools found above the ash layer made by the survivors are simpler, cruder, less sophisticated than those below. It's as if the eruption didn't just reduce human numbers, but reset human culture to a more primitive state. The most advanced populations, possibly dependent on complex social structures and specialized environments, were wiped out, leaving only the most adaptable, but not necessarily the most advanced, to repopulate the world. Recent discoveries in Sumatra itself have added another dimension to the mystery. Lake Toba, which fills the massive caldera left by the eruption, has yielded sonar readings suggesting artificial structures on the lake bed. Local Batak legends, dismissed by scientists as mythology, speak of a great kingdom that existed before the mountain exploded, whose people possessed knowledge of the stars and could shape stone with sound. The legends describe how the gods became angry at their pride, and destroyed them with fire from below and ice from above, a poetic but accurate description of a super-volcanic eruption. The Toba eruption also coincides with the mysterious disappearance of Homo erectus from Asia, a species that had survived for nearly 2 million years. Neanderthals, who were arguably better adapted to cold conditions than we were, began their terminal decline after Toba. The Denisovans, who we now know contributed genes for high-altitude adaptation to modern Tibetans, fade from the record. It's as if Toba created an evolutionary filter that selected not for intelligence or advancement, but for sheer adaptability and luck. Dr. Francis Thackeray of the University of Witwatersrand has proposed that Toba might have triggered what he calls a punctuated evolution event. The extreme environmental stress caused rapid genetic and cultural changes in the surviving population. This could explain the sudden appearance of behaviorally modern humans in the archaeological record shortly after Toba, not as gradual evolution, but as desperate adaptation to catastrophic conditions. The survivors were forced to innovate or die, and those innovations became the foundation of all subsequent human culture. Climate models for a Toba-scale eruption today are terrifying. Global agricultural collapse would occur within weeks as ash clouds block sunlight. The food supply chain would fail within months. Billions would starve. Technology would collapse as infrastructure failed and conflicts erupted over remaining resources. We are, paradoxically, more vulnerable than our ancestors because we've lost the skills to survive without our technological support systems, and the volcanologists warn that Toba is not dead, but merely dormant, showing signs of renewed activity that suggest another eruption is not a matter of if, but when. If Toba erased advanced human cultures 74,000 years ago, reducing us to a handful of traumatized survivors who had to rebuild from nothing, what other resets has humanity experienced that we've completely forgotten? The Great Flood evidence. Every culture on Earth has a flood myth. Not most cultures, not many cultures, every culture. From the Epic of Gilgamesh in Mesopotamia to the story of Manu in Hindu tradition, from Noah's Ark to the Hopi tales of Spider Grandmother saving the faithful, from Chinese stories of Ganyu fighting the waters to Aboriginal Australian songs about the drowning of the land bridges. The details vary, but the core narrative is identical. A great flood destroyed the world, only a few survived, and they had to rebuild civilization from nothing. Science has long dismissed these as independent myths, but mounting evidence suggests they're memories of a real event or series of events that nearly ended human civilization. The most compelling evidence comes from geology. At the end of the last ice age, between 15,000 and 11,000 years ago, sea levels rose by 400 feet. But this didn't happen gradually. New research shows it occurred in massive pulses called meltwater events. Meltwater pulse 1A, around 14,600 years ago, raised sea levels by 60 feet in less than 400 years, possibly in decades. Meltwater pulse 1B, around 11,500 years ago, added another 40 feet. For people living on coasts, which is where most advanced cultures developed, these would have been civilization-ending catastrophes. Dr. Robert Ballard, the oceanographer who discovered the Titanic, has found compelling evidence that flood myths are based on real events. His exploration of the Black Sea revealed that it was once a freshwater lake hundreds of feet below current sea level. Around 5600 BCE, the Mediterranean broke through the Bosphorus Strait in a catastrophic flood. Water poured in at 200 times the flow of Niagara Falls. The roar would have been audible for hundreds of miles. The water level rose 6 inches per day, drowning 40,000 square miles of land, an area the size of Scotland in less than 3 years. Ballard's team found intact human structures on the Black Sea floor foundations of buildings, stone tools, pottery, all preserved by the unique chemistry of the deep water. These weren't gradual abandoned settlements, but communities overwhelmed suddenly. The population would have fled in all directions, carrying with them traumatic memories of a flood that seemed to swallow the world. These refugees became the ancestors of European, Middle Eastern, and Asian populations, all carrying the same story of a great deluge. But the Black Sea flood was just one of many. The Persian Gulf was dry land during the Ice Age, a fertile valley watered by the combined Tigris and Euphrates rivers. As sea levels rose, this entire region, possibly the actual location of the biblical Eden, was swallowed by the Indian Ocean. The Gulf of Cambay off India, where we've found submerged cities, experienced similar flooding. The Sunda Shelf connecting Southeast Asia to Indonesia contained landmass twice the size of India that vanished beneath the waves, taking with it any civilizations that existed there. Marine geologists have discovered evidence of massive tsunamis during this period that dwarf anything in recorded history. The Storegga Slide around 6100 BCE sent a tsunami across the North Atlantic that was 70 feet high when it hit Scotland. Sediment deposits show similar megatsunamis struck coastlines worldwide during the period of rapid ice melt. These weren't local disasters, but global catastrophes that would have seemed like divine punishment to those experiencing them. The detail preserved in flood myths is remarkable and consistent with geological evidence. Many describe the flood preceded by strange weather, blood-red rain, possibly from atmospheric dust, the sun disappearing volcanic, or impact winter earthquakes and ground-cracking isostatic rebound as ice sheets melted. They describe mountains of water, whirlpools that swallowed entire lands, and new islands appearing as others vanished. These aren't poetic exaggerations, but accurate descriptions of what rapid sea level, rise, and associated geological changes would look like. Dr. Bruce Mass of Los Alamos National Laboratory has analyzed flood myths from 175 cultures and found remarkable consistencies that point to a specific date, 2807 BCE. Many myths mention specific astronomical conjunctions occurring during the flood. Chinese astronomical records, Mesopotamian observations, and Mayan calculations all point to a unique alignment of planets that occurred on May 10th, 2807 BCE. Mass suggests this date marks a comet impact in the Indian Ocean that triggered massive tsunamis affecting every coastline and creating the unified flood myth tradition. The archaeological evidence supports catastrophic flooding. Underwater archaeologist Dr. Nick Fleming has catalogued over 500 submerged archaeological sites worldwide, all at depths consistent with post-Ice Age flooding. These aren't scattered ruins, but entire cities with streets, buildings, harbors, and temples. Off India, Japan, Cuba, the Bahamas, the Mediterranean, all showing advanced construction that would have required sophisticated civilization to create. The implications are staggering. If the flood myths are memories of real events, then civilizations existed before the floods that were advanced enough to build cities, create monuments, and maintain oral traditions accurate enough to preserve astronomical observations for thousands of years. These weren't primitive hunter-gatherers, but sophisticated cultures that were erased so completely that we've forgotten they existed preserved only in myths we've dismissed as fantasy. Standing at the shore, knowing that beneath the waves lie the ruins of entire civilizations that were swallowed by rising seas, you have to wonder if it happened to them. What makes us think we're safe from the same fate? These catastrophic events share a terrifying pattern. They demonstrate that advanced civilizations can be erased so completely that only fragments remain in myths and mysteries. The Younger Dryas impact the Toba eruption, and the Great Floods weren't gradual declines, but sudden resets that reduced humanity to scattered bands of survivors who had to rebuild from nothing. Each catastrophe left its mark in our genetics, our geology, and our collective memory. We are the descendants of the survivors, carrying in our DNA the bottlenecks of near extinction, in our myths the memories of worlds destroyed, and in our archaeology the fragments of achievements we've forgotten how to replicate. The message is clear: advancement doesn't guarantee survival, and the forces that ended previous civilizations are still active, still dangerous, and still largely beyond our control. Hidden connections and suppressed discoveries. The Antarctic ice core. Anomalies in 1998, when Russian, French, and American scientists extracted ice cores from deep beneath Antarctica's surface at Vostok Station. They expected to find a climate record stretching back 400,000 years. What they found instead has been largely classified, with only fragments of data released to the public through carefully controlled scientific papers. But even these fragments reveal something extraordinary, evidence that someone or something was conducting industrial activities on Earth long before humans supposedly evolved, leaving traces that shouldn't exist according to everything we think we know about our planet's history. The Vostok ice cores are like a library written in frozen water. Each layer preserves a perfect record of the atmosphere at the time. The snow fell trapped, air bubbles containing ancient atmospheres, pollen from long-extinct plants, volcanic ash from eruptions, dust from distant deserts, and anything else that was in the air. Reading these cores should be straightforward paleoclimatology. Instead, it's become one of the most classified scientific projects outside of weapons research, at depths corresponding to specific time periods, roughly 12,000 years ago, 41,000 years ago, 106,000 years ago, and 420,000 years ago. The cores contain anomalies that violate our understanding of Earth's history. Dr. Jean-Robert Petit, one of the lead researchers, published data showing unusual metallic particles at these depths. These aren't natural formations. They show evidence of smelting, alloying, and processing that requires technology. The particles include aluminum alloys that don't occur in nature and require electrolysis to produce a process supposedly invented in 1886. They contain titanium-vanadium alloys used in aerospace applications that weren't developed until the 1950s. Most disturbingly, they include isotope ratios that suggest nuclear processing enrichment patterns that only occur in reactor-produced materials. The official explanation is contamination from drilling equipment, but this doesn't hold up. The particles are embedded within the ice matrix, not on the surface. They appear at consistent depths across multiple cores, drilled years apart using different equipment. Even more puzzling are the biological anomalies. At certain depths, the ice contains microorganisms that display signs of genetic engineering. These aren't natural bacteria preserved in ice, but organisms with gene sequences that don't appear anywhere in nature. They contain what geneticists call impossible combinations. Genes from different kingdoms of life spliced together in ways that require deliberate manipulation. Some researchers have suggested these could be biomarkers, biological signatures left deliberately, though by whom and for what purpose remains unknown. The magnetic anomalies in the cores are another mystery. At depths corresponding to around 41,000 years ago, the ice records magnetic field fluctuations that don't match Earth's known magnetic history. These are localized, intense magnetic pulses that suggest artificial generation rather than planetary processes. Similar anomalies appear in ocean sediment cores from the same period, indicating a global phenomenon that affected the entire planet's magnetic field. Dr. Lev Savatyugin of Russia's Arctic and Antarctic Research Institute has hinted at discoveries that go far beyond published data. In presentations to select scientific audiences, he's mentioned structured deposits, showing signs of intentional placement rather than natural accumulation. He's referred to information-bearing particles that contain patterns suggesting they were designed to preserve data, though the encoding method remains undeciphered. Most mysteriously, he's described chronological markers that appear at regular intervals, as if someone was deliberately leaving timestamps in Earth's ice record. The suppression surrounding these discoveries follows a familiar pattern. Scientists who attempt to publish comprehensive analyses find their funding eliminated. Papers submitted to journals disappear into peer review and never emerge. Researchers who speak publicly about the implications find their careers destroyed. The raw data from the cores is classified at levels typically reserved for nuclear weapons research. Whatever is in that ice has powerful people terrified. Independent researcher Michael Cremo has noted correlations between the ice core anomalies and other suppressed discoveries. The depths showing technological particles correspond to mass extinction events that lack adequate natural explanations. They align with proposed dates for lost civilizations mentioned in ancient texts. They match the time frames of other anomalous artifacts found in coal deposits and ancient rock strata that suggest technology existed millions of years before humans evolved. The implications are staggering. If the ice core anomalies are genuine, they suggest that Earth has hosted industrial civilizations multiple times, possibly non-human ones. They indicate that someone has been monitoring or marking Earth's history for hundreds of thousands of years. They prove that the linear progression of evolution and civilization we've been taught is completely wrong. No wonder the data is classified. What message is encoded in Antarctica's ice, who left it there, and why are governments worldwide cooperating to keep it secret? The global pyramid network. Look at a map of pyramid locations worldwide, and you'll notice something that archaeologists don't want to discuss. They're not randomly distributed. Over 1,000 pyramid structures exist on Earth, on every inhabited continent, built by cultures that supposedly had no contact with each other. Yet they're positioned according to a mathematical plan that encodes the dimensions of our planet, the precession of the equinoxes, and possibly instructions we haven't yet decoded. This isn't coincidence. This is evidence of a coordinated global civilization or knowledge system that mainstream history says never existed. Dr. Carl Monk, a former cryptologist for the U.S. military, has spent decades analyzing what he calls The Code, the mathematical relationships between ancient sites worldwide. His work dismissed by mainstream archaeology but increasingly validated by GPS measurements and satellite imagery, shows that pyramid locations encode their exact positions using mathematical constants. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, when its latitude and longitude are multiplied together and divided by the precise number of stones in its construction, yields the speed of light in meters per second. This should be impossible. But the mathematical encoding goes deeper. The positions of pyramids worldwide, when connected by lines, create geometric patterns that incorporate fundamental mathematical constants, p-phi, the golden ratio, and Euler's number. The distances between pyramids encode the dimensions of Earth, the distance to the Moon, the length of the precession cycle. Either ancient cultures had advanced mathematical knowledge and could measure the planet precisely, or someone who could give them this information. Dr. Semir Osmanagic Discover of the controversial Bosnian pyramids has documented another connection between pyramid sites. They all generate measurable electromagnetic phenomena. Pyramids worldwide emit ultrasound at specific frequencies, create ionization fields above their peaks, and generate electromagnetic pulses. The frequency most commonly detected, 28 kHz, appears at pyramid sites, from Egypt to Mexico to China. This isn't random. This is tuning, as if the pyramids were designed to resonate at specific frequencies. The alignments between pyramids on different continents are mathematically impossible to be coincidental. The Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan in Mexico aligns precisely with the pyramids of Giza when accounting for continental drift over the past 400–500 years. Chinese pyramids near Xi'an align with both Egyptian and Mesoamerican pyramids along Great Circle routes. The Bosnian pyramids, if genuine, complete geometric patterns started by confirmed ancient pyramids. We're looking at a planned network, not independent construction. Recent discoveries have pushed back the timeline of pyramid construction far beyond what mainstream archaeology accepts. Gunung Padang in Indonesia has been confirmed as a pyramid structure with construction phases dating back 20,000 years or more. The Bosnian pyramids, increasingly supported by evidence despite fierce opposition, show construction dates of 30,000 years or more. If valid, these dates mean pyramid building was occurring during the Ice Age, when humans were supposedly nomadic hunter-gatherers, incapable of monumental architecture. Underground tunnel systems connecting pyramid sites are being discovered worldwide. In Egypt, a vast network of tunnels connects the Giza pyramids with other sites along the Nile. In South America, subterranean passages link pyramid sites across thousands of miles, crossing under national borders and mountain ranges. In Europe, prehistoric tunnels center on pyramid-like mounds and connect to sites hundreds of miles away. These tunnels show advanced engineering acoustic properties that allow sound to travel vast distances, ventilation systems that still function, and construction techniques we can't replicate. The purpose of this global pyramid network remains enigmatic, but evidence points to something extraordinary. Some researchers propose they were power generation systems exploiting Earth's natural electromagnetic field to produce energy. The piezoelectric properties of granite and limestone used in pyramids support this theory. Others suggest they were communication devices using Earth itself as a transmission medium for ultra-low frequency waves. that could travel globally. Still others believe they were designed to stabilize Earth's magnetic field or climate, a planetary-scale engineering project. The knowledge encoded in pyramids suggests their builders understood principles we're only rediscovering. The pyramid shape itself is optimal for earthquake resistance, electromagnetic focusing, and preservation across millennia. The mathematical relationships encoded predict astronomical events thousands of years in the future. The positioning creates a geodetic grid that maps Earth more accurately than we could until satellite technology. This isn't primitive architecture. This is advanced science encoded in stone. If the pyramid network is evidence of a global civilization with advanced technology, what happened to them and why did cultures worldwide independently decide to build the same structure unless they weren't independent at all? The Smithsonian cover-ups. For over a century, the Smithsonian Institution, America's most prestigious scientific organization, has been accused of systematically suppressing, destroying, and hiding archaeological discoveries that challenge the accepted narrative of human history. These aren't wild conspiracy theories from internet forums, but documented allegations from credentialed archaeologists, newspaper archives, and Native American oral histories that describe a pattern of evidence destruction so consistent it can only be deliberate policy. The most explosive allegations concern giant human skeletons discovered across North America throughout the 1800s and early 1900s. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and hundreds of local newspapers reported these discoveries in detail. These weren't tabloid stories, but serious archaeological reports featuring measurements, photographs, and testimonies from respected citizens. The skeletons ranged from 7 to 12 feet tall, often with double rows of teeth, elongated skulls, and 6 fingers and toes. According to these reports, many skeletons were sent to the Smithsonian for study. They were catalogued, assigned accession numbers, and then vanished. Freedom of Information Act requests for these specimens return claims that they never existed despite paper trails showing their acquisition. Warehouse manifests from the early 1900s list them. Internal memos discuss them. Then around 1920 they disappear from all records. Jim Vieira, a stonemason who became obsessed with these reports, has compiled over 1,500 newspaper accounts from reputable sources. His research reveals a clear pattern: discoveries reported regularly until the 1920s, then nothing. The cutoff is too sharp to be natural. It coincides with changes in Smithsonian leadership and the adoption of the Powell Doctrine, which stated that Native Americans were recent arrivals incapable of sophisticated construction. Any evidence contradicting this view was to be reinterpreted or removed from public view. But the cover-up extends far beyond giant skeletons. In 1909, the Phoenix Gazette reported that Smithsonian archaeologist G.E. Kincaid discovered a vast underground city in the Grand Canyon, complete with Egyptian-style artifacts, hieroglyphs, and mummies. The Smithsonian denies Kincaid ever worked for them, but pension records and employee directories prove otherwise. The area where the discovery allegedly occurred is now restricted off-limits to hikers and researchers enforced by federal agents. Richard J. Dewhurst, author of The Ancient Giants Who Ruled America, has documented dozens of cases where artifacts suggesting pre-Columbian transoceanic contact were confiscated by the Smithsonian. Roman coins and Native American burial mounds dismissed as hoaxes. Hebrew inscriptions on stones in Ohio declared forgeries. Viking artifacts in Minnesota explained away despite metallurgical analysis, proving their authenticity. In each case, after Smithsonian examination, the original artifacts disappear. The pattern extends to technological artifacts that shouldn't exist. Throughout the late 1800s, newspapers reported discoveries of apparently manufactured objects in geological strata millions of years old. A gold chain in Illinois coal, dated to 300 million years ago. A metal vase in Massachusetts bedrock, dated to 600 million years ago. An iron cup in Oklahoma, coal dated to 312 million years ago. These objects, called out-of-place artifacts or UU parts, were routinely sent to the Smithsonian and subsequently disappeared or were declared lost. Dr. Virginia Steen McIntyre became a whistleblower after her dating of the Hueyatlaco archaeological site in Mexico was suppressed. Her research showed human habitation 250,000 years ago, far older than humans were supposed to be in the Americas. When she insisted on publishing her data, she was fired, her career destroyed, and the site was closed to further research. Decades later, independent researchers have confirmed her dates, but the Smithsonian still refuses to acknowledge the findings. Internal documents leaked by former employees reveal the extent of the cover-up. There are sealed vaults beneath the National Museum of Natural History, containing artifacts that contradict established chronology. There are classified archaeological reports that describe anomalous discoveries requiring special handling. There are protocols for dealing with discoveries that challenge accepted historical narrative, which involve immediate confiscation and classification. The motivation appears to be maintaining scientific orthodoxy and political control. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Smithsonian promoted specific theories about human development that supported contemporary political narratives about manifest destiny and racial superiority. Evidence of advanced ancient civilizations in the Americas would have undermined justifications for colonization and Native American displacement. Once the cover-up began, institutional momentum and reputation, protection ensured its continuation. Recent leaks have revealed that many lost artifacts still exist stored in off-site facilities that even most Smithsonian employees don't know about. Photographs smuggled out show anomalous skeletons, technological artifacts, and ancient writings that would revolutionize our understanding of history. But accessing these materials requires security clearances, usually reserved for classified military projects. What evidence of our true history lies hidden in Smithsonian vaults, and what would happen to our understanding of human civilization if it were released? These hidden connections and suppressed discoveries reveal a coordinated effort to keep humanity ignorant of its true history. The Antarctic ice cores suggest industrial activity predating human evolution. The Global Pyramid Network indicates a planned worldwide civilization with advanced technology. The Smithsonian cover-ups show systematic suppression of contradictory evidence. Together, they paint a picture of deliberate deception on a massive scale. The question isn't whether there's a cover-up anymore, the evidence is overwhelming. The question is why. What is so threatening about our true history that multiple governments, institutions, and organizations cooperate to hide it? Are they protecting us from knowledge that would shatter society? Are they maintaining power structures that depend on historical ignorance? Or is there something about our past so disturbing that they believe humanity isn't ready to know the truth? When we step back and look at all these mysteries together, a disturbing pattern emerges that transcends individual anomalies. The lost civilizations, impossible structures, unexplained phenomena, catastrophic events, and suppressed discoveries aren't isolated mysteries. They're interconnected pieces of a larger puzzle that reveals a hidden history of Earth far stranger and more complex than we've been allowed to know. Consider the technological capabilities implied across all these discoveries. The builders of the White City possessed urban planning skills that would be impressive today. The Antarctic pyramids, if artificial, required construction techniques that could function in extreme conditions. The surgical ants demonstrate medical knowledge that parallels human achievement. The younger Dryas survivors encoded astronomical observations in myths that remained accurate for 13,000 years. This isn't random. It's evidence that advanced knowledge manifests repeatedly throughout history in different forms. Different species, different civilizations, as if intelligence itself is trying to express something fundamental through whatever vehicle is available. The pattern of sudden collapse repeats with haunting consistency across all categories. Every advanced civilization we've discovered met a sudden, catastrophic end. The Bronze Age supercivilization abandoned everything simultaneously. Kambat sank beneath the waves. The younger Dryas impact reset human development. The Toba eruption erased entire human species. These weren't gradual declines, but sudden terminations, as if reaching certain thresholds triggers reset events. The geographic and mathematical connections between sites are too precise to be coincidental. Pyramids worldwide encode the same constants. Ancient sites align along great circles. Catastrophes occur at regular intervals, matching astronomical cycles. Suppressed artifacts appear at consistent geological depths. Either there's a natural principle we don't understand that causes independent cultures to develop identical knowledge, or this knowledge comes from a common source. Most significantly, the suppression of evidence follows identical patterns, whether we're looking at ice cores, giant skeletons, or underwater cities. Discoveries are made, evidence is documented, then it disappears into institutional vaults, while the discoverers are discredited or silenced. This isn't random skepticism, but coordinated suppression that crosses national boundaries and institutional rivalries. Someone or some group has been working very hard for a very long time to keep humanity from understanding its true history. The implications are staggering. We're not looking at isolated mysteries, but evidence of cycles of advancement and catastrophe that have repeated throughout Earth's history. Civilizations rise, achieve remarkable advancement, then get reset by catastrophic events. Knowledge is encoded in monuments and myths to survive the reset. Survivors rebuild from scratch, rediscovering what was lost, and always there are those who work to suppress the evidence to maintain the illusion that we're the first, the only, the pinnacle of development. As we stand at the end of this extraordinary journey through 15 mysteries that challenge the very foundations of human history, we must confront a truth that is both humbling and terrifying. We are not who we think we are. We are not the first advanced civilization on this planet. We are not the pinnacle of evolution or achievement. We are simply the current iteration in a cycle that has repeated countless times, each rise followed by catastrophic fall, each achievement followed by amnesia. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. Lost civilizations like the White City and the Bronze Age supercivilization achieved levels of organization and technology that rival our own, then vanished so completely we only discovered them through space-age technology. Impossible structures like the Antarctic pyramids and golden flyers demonstrate knowledge of principles we've only recently rediscovered or still don't understand. Phenomena like surgical ants and the Harakbut face show that intelligence and capability manifest in forms we never imagined. Catastrophic events like the Younger Dryas and Toba eruption prove that advanced civilizations can be erased in days, leaving only fragments and myth. And the systematic suppression of discoveries shows that someone desperately wants to keep us ignorant of this cycle. But here's what should keep you awake at night. If this pattern holds, we're not exempt. Every civilization we've discovered thought they were permanent. The builders of Kambat couldn't imagine their city beneath the waves. The Bronze Age fortress builders believed their network would last forever. They were wrong. And the forces that destroyed them, cosmic impacts, supervolcanoes, floods, climate catastrophes, are still active. The torrid meteor stream still crosses Earth's orbit twice yearly. Yellowstone still builds pressure beneath its caldera. The ice caps are melting faster than at any time in human history. We're not safe from the reset, yet within this dark realization lies a profound hope. Knowledge survives. Despite catastrophes that should have erased everything, the pyramid builders encoded their mathematics in stone. The flood survivors preserved their warnings in myths. The surgical ants continue their medical procedures. Intelligence, consciousness, knowledge, these things persist even when civilizations fall. They find new expressions, new vehicles, new ways to manifest. The universe seems determined to preserve and recreate complexity despite periodic resets. We stand at a unique moment in this cycle. For the first time, a civilization has developed the technology to see the pattern. We can read the warnings in ice cores and ocean sediments. We can detect incoming asteroids and predict volcanic eruptions. We can preserve knowledge in ways that might survive even civilizational collapse. We have a chance, perhaps the first real chance any iteration has had, to break the cycle. But only if we acknowledge the pattern, learn from our predecessors' failures, and prepare for the challenges we know are coming. The suppression of evidence isn't just academic dishonesty. It's criminally negligent. By hiding the truth about past catastrophes and lost civilizations, those in power are preventing us from preparing for future events. They're choosing institutional reputation and political control over human survival. Every hidden artifact, every classified discovery, every suppressed paper represents knowledge that could help us avoid the fate of our predecessors. This is why this information matters. This is why you need to share it, discuss it, demand answers. The mysteries we've explored aren't just historical curiosities. They're warnings, guides, blueprints for survival. The surgical ants show that medical knowledge can emerge in unexpected forms. The pyramids demonstrate how to encode information across millennia. The myths preserve accurate records of catastrophic events. The suppressed discoveries reveal technologies and capabilities we need to rediscover. Each mystery is a piece of survival knowledge our predecessors tried to leave for us. As you process everything we've discovered, remember that you're not just learning about the past. You're preparing for the future. The cycle of rise and fall isn't inevitable if we understand it. The reset isn't unavoidable if we prepare for it. The amnesia isn't permanent if we preserve knowledge properly. We have advantages our predecessors lacked: global communication, digital preservation, scientific understanding. But we also face unprecedented vulnerabilities, dependence on fragile technology, loss of survival skills, weapons that could end civilization in minutes. The choice is ours, but time is running short. The cosmic cycles that ended previous civilizations continue their inexorable motion. The geological forces that triggered past catastrophes continue building pressure. The institutions suppressing truth continue their cover-ups. But now you know. You've seen the evidence. You understand the pattern. The question is, what will you do with this knowledge? Subscribe to stay informed as new discoveries emerge and old mysteries yield their secrets. Share this video with others who are ready to question the official narrative. Comment with your own insights, experiences, and discoveries. Because solving these mysteries and breaking the cycle isn't a job for a few researchers or content creators. It requires all of us working together, sharing information, preserving knowledge, and preparing for whatever comes next. The mysteries are real. The danger is imminent. The cycle is repeating. But for the first time in human history, we might have a chance to break free. The adventure isn't ending. It's just beginning. And the most important discoveries, the ones that might save our civilization, are still waiting to be made. What will you discover when you start looking beyond the approved narrative? What knowledge will you preserve for future generations? What role will you play in breaking the cycle that has claimed every civilization before us? The truth is out there, buried in ice, hidden beneath waves, locked in vaults, encoded in stone, and scattered across the cosmos. It's time to reclaim our hidden history, understand our true nature, and prepare for our uncertain future. Because if we don't learn from the civilizations that came before, we're doomed to join them in the mystery's future. Humans will struggle to understand.